I worked, so you know, I sold the building 6x6 to Inca.
Oh, yeah.
So she was really helpful
Yeah.
because I needed her help. Like you would not like.
Yeah. I was talking there today because everyone was in New York last week. Every developer. So I work on. I'm a little out of my jurisdiction here because I deal on a big long-term development projects. But everyone's all the developers I work with were like all in New York last week. And like New York is bustling and everyone's back to work and I'm like, is it a sector right now? Is it because New York is all finance and we're more like laid back tech?
Well, it's by virtue, yeah, and there's more diversity, right?
But there's also 8 million people in New York and 300,000 here.
No, there's 2 million people that live in Manhattan, 8 million people live
Yeah.
in Manhattan, but we have 8 million in the Bay Area,
Yeah.
right? But our city is 800,000,
Yeah.
so it's half. But the problem is like
Hello. Thank you guys so much for being here for Chronicle Live at Manny's. We are so excited for tonight's program. I'm Sarah Fehlberg. I'm the editor of Emerging Product here at the Chronicle. Before we get started, I just want to do a quick, very unscientific poll. Who has been to one of the Chronicle Live events here before? Raise your hand. Yes, thank you. Okay, we got a couple repeat offenders. Thank you for being here. And who here is a Chronicle subscriber? Amazing. We love you. Thank you so much. But in all seriousness, you are the reason we can do events like this. You are the reason we have journalists like Laura doing the incredible stories that you read. Thank you so much for supporting local news. If you are not a subscriber yet, hopefully you have a great time tonight. And we have great deals. We have great sales happening all the time. Please go online. Consider supporting local journalism. Your support means everything to us and enables us to do the work that we do. If you'd like to stay on top of Chronicle events, if you have a good time tonight and would like to come to another one, we'll be back here in a couple weeks. We have a handy dandy QR code right up here that will allow you to do just that. Scan it, subscribe to our events newsletter, and we will let you know whenever we are doing things here at Manny's and all over the town. Thank you so much for being here. And without further ado, let's kick it over to our panel.
Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. It's awesome to see a full room and some familiar faces as well. I'm Laura Waxmann. I cover real estate and business for the Chronicle. I have been covering downtown since the entire pandemic, basically, and the changes that are happening there, and have been with the Chronicle for the past 6 months. And the Macy story obviously has been huge. Just talking about downtown and revitalization and what's next for our city. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of drill in and answer some questions that you guys might have. So today with me, we have Anne Topier, who is the Director of Development for the Office of Economic Workforce Development for the city, such a long title. Kazuko Morgan, who is a veteran broker and has had her hands all over Union Square, leasing, selling buildings, and has been active in the area for, I think, 2 decades. And then Chris Foley, who is a developer extraordinaire and also a development consultant with Ground Matrix. Please welcome our panelists. So there's been a lot of mixed news coming out of Union Square, from crime to public safety issues and concerns to investment from the mayor's office in the city and businesses changing on the corridor. The Macy's news has obviously been huge. Did it surprise you guys? Were you shocked? Yes. Who said yes? Oh, you were shocked? I was too. But how do you guys feel, panelists? I'll pass this one to Anne.
I think it was shocking. I think that we considered. Sorry.
Warming up.
I think. Certainly we know that department stores have not been, thriving since well before the pandemic. It is not a form of retail. I think it's not a form of retail that we knew was sort of the future of retail. I think that there's a lot of other uses and experiential retail and things that are really kind of moving in it. It's moving in a different direction. Online is certainly sort of taken a big bite out of retail. So this sort of department store retail has been on a decline, but we also knew that we certainly thought that the Union Square Macy's was the West Coast sort of trademark Macy's store. So between we knew that there was New York and San Francisco, so it certainly caught us off guard. We did not get a lot of advance notice.
So there was no communication.
So there was not the kind of a communication that I think the mayor would have appreciated on this notice.
Kazuko, I know you're in the know. What about you? I know you're watching the trends in Union Square. It's your business. What do you think?
Well, right now, nothing surprises us. So, so as much as it was definitely a shock, it's, as Anne says, you see the trend with department stores all across the country, all across the world, right? And the department store from 50 years ago has evolved. It's different. It has a different purpose. Back in the day, you went there for all things, for all different types of things, but it was because it was the main retail hub. Today, they've expanded onto all the brands have their own stores in certain cases. So I think the format of the department store needs to change and is evolving, right? But I think the big 1 million square feet, 500,000 square feet, those are definitely the ones that are undergoing change.
Right. And we'll dig into that some more tonight. Chris, so Mayor Breed said at the time when Macy's announced its closure in February that this is not a sign of the doom loop. How do you view this?
So if anyone here knows me, and there's a few people that do, I hate shopping. When I go shopping, I freak out. My girlfriend is like, I'll just do it for you. I'm like, thank you. But I went to Macy's last year to buy white t-shirts because I needed white t-shirts. And it was a scary experience. And the reason I say it's scary is Macy's not invested a dime in that building for years. Literally, the building was falling down in front of me. It was worn out. It was tired. And no one cared. And you could see it. So for any business to survive, you have to change, you have to adapt, and you have to invest into your capital infrastructure. And they had not invested into the capital infrastructure there. Considering the doom loop, I think any city in the world has really two options. They either bring people back in, they build a lot of housing, they make it cheap, they make the city really interesting, and you bring people back, or you're going to look like some cities that are in a doom loop. But San Francisco has great parks, great museums, great people. We just need to bring a bunch of people back.
Right. But downtown is obviously a concern. So since the pandemic, I was just looking through some old articles. I think 30 retailers have left the area in the last 4 years. Does that sound right? And I'm just kind of wondering, Chris and Kazuko, is there kind of a cascading effect? When one big business leaves, another follows, or how do you guys kind of explain that in this short time frame?
Who do you want to
Is this good?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Listen, over time, it's always a constant come and go for retailers. You sign 5-year leases, 10-year leases, right? Tenants come, they move, they relocate. So that's nothing new. I think the reason why we are so much in the press and it's magnified is it's happened in a very condensed period of time, and part of it is COVID and the recovery. And the other is it's because it's in a very small concentrated area. San Francisco has one of the densest areas for shopping in the world. You go to other cities, it's spread out, over a 20-mile area, and we're just not like that. It's all within, a few blocks. And so if you have few in a row, it's really in your face. But for the 30 stores that have closed, people unfortunately don't talk about the 20, 30 stores that have opened or are going to open.
We'll talk about that.
Yes, right? So, and I think that's the thing that we're facing that's not helping us in San Francisco is just the focus on the negativity rather than the positives.
Chris, just kind of back to that question, I know you have the Market on Market in the Twitter building. It's a kind of a food hall at the bottom of the Twitter's headquarters, X Corp at this point. How does this kind of ecosystem all fit together when there's, retailers leaving Union Square and there's empty office towers downtown? How does that impact you in mid-market?
Well, I mean, there's an article in the Chronicle, I think last week, about sales tax revenue and where their sales tax revenue got hit the worst. It's mid-market. We went from doing $20 million a year to $1 million. $1 million. We pay 14% of our total revenue in security. Our landlord, Shorenstein and JP Morgan, do not charge us rent. They do not charge us CAM. They do not charge us utilities.
CAM are common area maintenance.
They don't charge us anything because they're trying to keep us alive. And I had a talk with them this afternoon, and they said you're important to be here for their building, for the neighbor and the community. But what we need to do is we need to bring people back. So peak population in San Francisco was 880,000. Today there's about 820,000. We used to have 1 million people a day coming in every day, Monday through Friday, for office. All that's gone. So we have to bring a bunch of people back into the city, and we have to reduce regulation, and we have to just let it go. Let people go, open businesses, and go.
I think, snap for that. I think one point that you just brought up that's super interesting is, and this is kind of veering off of Union Square, but I promise we'll get back there. Landlords and building owners really wanting to work with tenants at this point, which is something that we really haven't seen. And this is a question to all of you. How do you guys kind of see that happening right now, playing out? And what does it mean when there's a vacancy in your building, on the block?
I actually have a little building in South of Market, and there's a tenant on the second floor, and they renewed the lease last year. They've been broken into 3 times in the past 3 months. They came to me the first break-in, can you put in cameras? Yes. The next break-in, can you put in different locks and more cameras? Yes. They literally got broken into, and the homeless person couldn't break out of the building, so SFPD and the fire department broke into the building to get them out. We spent $15,000 to fix that, by the way. The tenant then said, can you put in another gate? We put in another gate. The tenant called me and they said, you're really great. I said, no, you're paying rent, and I really appreciate you, because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. JP Morgan and Shorenstein of the market, they recognize keeping that thing alive is good, and their bet is people are going to come back. But we have to reduce regulation, we have to reduce problematic bureaucracy, and we have to let people just go open businesses and go in the city.
Since we're on the topic, and I always think this is really interesting, and I'd love to hear more about this. Some of the security measures that tenants, building owners have had to take in Union Square and elsewhere, that seems unprecedented at the moment.
So we can go on. So I have a 22,000 square foot food hall at 10th and Market. We actually had to close the hot food bar down because homeless and meth addicts would walk in, stick their hand in the food, and just shove it in their mouth. And then we'd have to throw everything out. And we literally had someone watching it. In case someone did that, we'd go throw everything out. So our food costs were, 120% of our sales. We have security in there. We have a person there. They have security at the Twitter building. But it doesn't matter what these people do. When they break into the building or they smash a piece of glass, they get a little citation. But that person's just going to do the same thing, so they're not going to show back up for jail. It's just terrible. I mean, I'm sorry, Ann, I think you're the best, by the way. But the Department of Public Health came in and found mouse droppings in the market. This is after they'd totally ripped apart the outside of the building to rat-proof it. They found 4 mouse droppings. Department of Public Health wanted me to put in 3 doors, mouse-proofing off the freight loading dock for $100,000. And helped me, by the way, get the Department of Public Health to realize that's crazy. What about all the feces on the street? Anyway.
Well,
that wasn't exactly how I dealt with that. But I mean, I think we've been through something that we've never been through before, and I think one of the things that I do want to. I completely understand. People are frustrated, and people have a right to be frustrated. And the conditions in the street have been incredibly challenging. And I do think the city recognizes that they're challenging. And there's nothing that we can do that will be fast enough of a response, but I do think we are determined to be responsive. I do want to say that because I think the narrative around San Francisco is probably the number one biggest detriment to our recovery. And so, I think talking about a doom loop, headlines about doom loops, sort of if everything is a headline about a doom loop, but the story is actually about something positive that happened. I mean, I really appreciate, because we're talking about how the fact, like, we always hear about the vacancies, but we never talk, no one ever really is interested in talking about that we're filling in vacancies, that we are adding businesses, that we are getting rid of regulations. I mean, we've done a lot in our downtown the past year. It's funny because I was just telling Laura that I'm so old school, so I have to have paper in front of me. And I'm looking at regulation. We got rid of a whole lot of regulations over the last year to make it easier to open businesses, to get rid of the restrictions, to make sure that you can open different types of businesses, to get rid of requirements in Union Square where your second, third, fourth, and fifth floor also have to be retail, because that is not a model that is going to work going forward. It's just not going to work. So we need to have more flexible zoning so that you can open any kind of business you want in our downtown, or make it an office or a residence or a university or something experiential. So that is all really important. But I really we appreciate, I mean, I certainly completely understand why people are frustrated, and I really want to just express how determined we are to change that frustration and let people know how we want people to experience San Francisco differently.
And I think it's important to acknowledge, that the street conditions and traffic, right, the foot traffic all plays into what's happening in downtown, but it's not the only thing that's changing the landscape. And, we'll talk about trends tonight and what's happening in retail. And I think it's really important to understand that this has been happening since before the pandemic. When we wrote about Nordstrom's in the Westfield Mall, the anchor tenant there, closing down, pulling out, after their lease expired last year, the owner of that mall wanted to transform some of that space into office space in 2019. And I'm pretty sure that's what happened in Macy's as well, right? With the iMagnet building, there were plans to convert some of that space. So what are the trends that we're seeing?
I mean, the iMagnet building has been under construction and is transforming, and will have both office, it will have retail, office, and residential, and they're doing a beautiful job. I think the Macy's men's building is also going to be office space, has Choto Mate on the roof, an absolutely spectacular restaurant on the roof that everyone should get into, and I think you need reservations, to get in there, because it's got a spectacular rooftop bar. And I really appreciate what you said about the density of retail. I mean, and I see Ken Rich in the audience, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have something like 7 linear miles of retail in that neighborhood. It's an incredible amount of real estate to try to fill with retail uses. So we have to think differently about how we're going to fill that real estate. It's too much space for retail. And so we're going to have to transition into what else can we do there, and how creative can we be about filling those spaces.
It's a multi-million-dollar question. Kazuko, can we just take a step back and think about Union Square's evolution over the years and kind of how it has become what it was before the pandemic, right, which was a kind of a luxury shopping district. How have you seen the district change, and what kind of brought those changes on?
Well, first of all, going back in history and time, Union Square was home to many luxury brands to begin with, and had one of the most beautiful department stores in the world, City of Paris, outside of New York. This was really the main shopping hub for luxury, better quality goods. And Union Square was a place where you'd get dressed up, white gloves. It was an event. You looked forward to it. I remember as a kid shopping with my mom and my Magnin, the whole thing, like getting dressed up, the dressing rooms, just like, champagne, like that's what you did when you kid. It was an occasion, coming all the time, and that's what you did. And it was also a different era where shopping, I come from a family of shoppers. Like, some people hate shopping, but it was a fun thing to do. But not only that, you'd also go eat, right? So it was an experience. And different, always different things to see and do and vibrant, right? And we never had these issues, like you said, of the homelessness and other things. And by the way, speaking of that, I know you've had your issues down there, and I think there are issues still in certain parts of the city. But, you know, we're in Union Square every day and, you know, walking from our office and back, and really feel like it's significantly, I think, cleaner than pre-COVID, safer, and the sidewalks are, I mean, and just even the sidewalks are really clean, the buildings are really clean. So I think when people take photos, I mean, it's interesting because there's people that go out of their way to go into the Tenderloin to take photos. They're hunting for these things to come back and put in their articles or videos. And to me, it's just sort of a head scratcher, like, why are you doing this? But it's important because every person that comes to visit San Francisco has a different experience, and I think having more consistency. There are some things that'll never change, right? But there's others that I think have made significant change. Where is Union Square today? I mean, it's still a place for luxury shopping. It's still a place for experiential. The one thing that we have lacked over the years is great restaurants, and that's particularly on the ground floor, and that's because of the rents, right? So if you look at over the years of the restaurants that closed, a lot of them were driven by a landlord saying, I could get quadruple or 10x of the rents, and so that's the route they went. But today, the rents have come down significantly, and I think it adds a lot to the vibrancy.
So what, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the rents and kind of what that landscape is looking like at the moment. I know just from covering the office market, there's been a significant drop in office rents, but in some buildings they're still holding steady. And I also know that, you know, building owners are tied to their lenders with rents and rental income. Maybe, Chris, you can explain a little bit about what that looks like and some of the obligations that owners have and why rents maybe aren't coming down to the point that they need to help new business come in.
Yeah, and I also want to mention something. I moved to San Francisco when I got out of the Navy in 1987, so I've seen the city come back and forth. The city will come back. We will come back. We'll come back in a different way. It'll be super great again. It's going to take a little bit longer, but we will be back. We're San Francisco. Have a nice day.
I think that's why we're all here, right?
Yeah, I mean, but that's the reality. Regarding rents, it's really interesting. So I'm not an office person in general, but in the office market, if you have a trophy, Class A, beautiful office building, your vacancy rate is about 15.5%. If you have a Class B, Class C building, your vacancy rate is about 45%. So it's kind of grim. And there's really no tenants that want to go into that Class B or Class C building, even if it's $2 a foot, because there's no demand. But from a landlord-lender relationship, what happens is if you bought a building, let's just say you bought a building for $100 million, and you have $65 million on debt, and your lender says you have all these responsibilities to get X amount of rent, or if you don't get X amount of rent, you're in a violation of your loan covenant. So if you don't get your $60 rent, you actually have to pay down your loan. So what the lender does and what the borrower does, the landlord does, is they wait to try to get that tenant to make sure they can do the loan covenant, and they hope they get enough tenants in before the loan's due. If they don't get it before the loan's due, then the lender and hopefully the landlord work out a deal to kind of extend it and hope for the best. But here's the great news about buildings today in San Francisco. Yes, they're doing deed in lieu, which means they're going back to the bank. People are buying them. So every building that's been going back to the bank gets bought. They're going to get reinvested in, and that's the good news. If we ever see the buildings not get bought, we're in trouble.
So you know, we're talking about office right now, but this obviously applies to commercial buildings across the board. Buildings in Union Square have traded as well, or at least gone back, you know, to lenders. So this is kind of a commercial and even residential problem, really.
It's across the board. I mean, residential, what happened was you borrowed money at a 3% interest rate. You expected rents to go up. Rents stayed flat or went down. You have to refinance in a 7% interest rate. That dog does not hunt. You actually can't. You have to put in a bunch of equity to buy the loan down to make your debt coverage work. So you actually have to get that building back. What is interesting, though, in Union Square, and Kazuko can speak to this, there are people buying buildings for a lot of money, the luxury retailers, so they can own a piece of real estate long term. So there's actually good news on the real estate front. It's not all bad.
Kazuko, what are some buildings that have recently fit into that category?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of owner users, right? And we're seeing that across the board. I mean, there always has been. Prada used to own their building way back when in Union Square. And we're just going to, I think, see the continued momentum of that too for tenants that really believe in the city and believe in the location, right? It's sort of a one of a kind. And the amount of money the people in these tenants invest, it makes sense for them to buy, and especially as the market corrects and the basis is lower, I think we will see more of that. One of the ones that we did was, I call my COVID deal, is the sale of 6x6 to Inca.
That's
Right?
a big one.
And that was a big one. That was 250,000 square feet, and they felt that, instead of being a tenant, we want to own it, we want to control it, and do what we'd like to do. And, one of the issues sometimes is when you're a tenant, you're forced, you've got under timelines, you've got rent. When you own it, you can go at your own timeline, speed, and really think about holistically what you're going to do. So that was, I think, a really good example there.
So just for some context, Inca is the sister company of IKEA,
Correct.
and as you know, they just opened up on 6th Street in the 6x6 mall, which was vacant for years, right?
Yeah.
So they're coming in there and activating that space, but I think at a time that's very interesting to watch.
Yeah, so it's Inca's the parent company of IKEA, and it was they opened the retail store, and then the co-working opened earlier this year, and then just recently this month the food hall opened. So that's really exciting because it's brought a lot of energy to that part of Market Street.
So as a skeptical journalist, I wonder, is there more, we have more co-working space when so much office space is empty, and it's curious, just a curious thing to watch, but they seem very hopeful, and they have, and you said experiential retail earlier, which is kind of the buzzword that I'm hearing when I'm reporting, just not just having a straight up, retail shop that you go into to buy things. You actually stay in that building and you eat there and work there. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that model is?
And what's interesting too is, in a time where the office market is struggling, right? A lot of not a lot, but there's a fair amount of these co-working companies that are actually thriving and doing very well. Right? So it comes down to the operator. It's the same thing as like a good retailer, a good restaurant, right? You can't say blanket like all of it's bad. It's just like same thing with office buildings, right? The Class A view space, very little vacancy, and it's very competitive. I mean, we've been in the market with some of the tenants, and just it's going like this, and which goes against everything that we're seeing right now, right? Same thing with retail. Some of the great spaces, it's a bidding war still, even though we know where retail is. So it's everything's a case by case, but yeah, we'll just see the continued evolution.
And one more thing about the IKEA building. I'm just curious, was that deal in the works before the pandemic, or was that kind of an opportunity that they saw because of the changing?
Oh no, it was in
dynamics?
the works
Okay.
pre-pandemic.
So they knew they wanted to be here.
Yes.
And that's their first real, like, what I'm understanding is the first type of store, market,
In the
food hall
US.
In the US.
In the U.S., yes.
It's a big experiment all the way around.
And yeah.
But one thing I wanted to get back to, just to not have this get lost, we talked about buildings trading and lower basis and what that means. And so the significance of that, Chris, right, is lower rents potentially throughout downtown.
Yeah, no. When the buildings trade and you bought a building that sold for pre-COVID for $1,000 or $1,200 a square foot, and you just bought it for $150 or $200 a foot, you have the ability to go invest in the building, make it an interesting building where the tenants actually want to be there, and there's a reason to be there. It's a cool building, so your rents can actually drop dramatically, and you can still get a good return. And so it's going to be very interesting seeing the repositioning of all these buildings. And I actually met a co-working company the other day called Neon.
Neon.
Very interesting. So he was the 70th employee at WeWork, and he started out in Union Street. He's going to open one downtown. He's going to open one in the Castro. And basically what he told me the other day is people hate working at home. And they want to get out of their living
Is
room.
that true?
and they want to go somewhere else. They might not want to go to the office, but they want to go somewhere. So he's actually killing it, and he's raising money, and he's going to go open more locations.
Okay, So you believe in co-working and that being an answer to some of that space right now.
I think working from home is incredibly bad for society, and if I work from home, I blow my brains out.
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I hate working from home, and there's nothing worse than being in the office and not having other people around. And I mean, I feel like it just completely depletes your sort of experience, and it's just not. It just makes your work life not fun. And we have to work, most of us, so you want it to be fun.
And you guys, the city, we were talking about this earlier, is coming in 3 days a week, right, at least? So that's kind of the mandate.
Yeah, you're mandated
Yeah.
to come in at least 3 days a week. But I mean, a lot of us are in. I mean, I'm in 5 days a week. So there's a lot of people who are in more than that, and it's so much more. There's just so much more that gets done.
And we're talking about like cycles of recovery and downturns, and obviously the city has gone through this before, but the work from home element is what really is shaking things up. And I think that's pretty much true across the board, right? That's the element that we haven't seen before.
But you know what? It's interesting. So a friend of mine who left the United States with his wife and child, and he lives in France now. He just came back for a week. And he says everybody works where he lives in France. Everybody goes to work. They eat outside. They're enjoying their life. I just got back from New York. Everybody's going to work. Everybody's on the street. The restaurants are packed. So I don't shop, but I eat and drink. And I drink and eat, and I drink and I drink and I drink and I drink. But so in New York, it's booming. Europe's booming. Asia's booming. We just have to get this place going again. That's all.
And that's why we're here tonight. That's what we're here to discuss. Anne, you wanted to add?
I was gonna say this room is booming. I mean, it's like there's people out.
Thank you. But obviously we are working towards that still. There have been some changes made by the city recently in Union Square specifically with the zoning there, and you alluded to that earlier. Can you kind of talk about what has been passed and how that has actually worked out and what you're seeing so far? I know it's pretty new still. This happened last year.
It's so funny. I looked at this earlier today. We passed these, again, these are just sort of reducing restrictions, reducing constraints. Union Square downtown, and these are, it's in the C3 zoning, which is our most flexible zoning in the city. So we allow almost anything in C3 zoning. It's office, residential, any sort of commercial use. But we did expand uses and also get rid of some of the constraints. We got rid of things like rear yard setbacks, things that make it just harder to get permits.
Such wonky stuff, but it matters,
it's very
right?
wonky. It's also, we passed this last July. It feels like it was 11 years ago to me, but it was just last July. So, we basically made it just easier for a wider range of uses. You can include housing, institutions, arts and culture, offices and retail. Expanded to allow senior housing, residential care, outdoor entertainment, animal hospitals, trade schools. I mean, just basically like what wasn't allowed is now allowed, is basically the mindset around creating flexible workspace, pop-up activations, getting rid of limits on accessory storage, just across the board, just, to Chris's point, getting rid of regulations, getting rid of things that make it harder to open a business. There's other things that we're doing specifically that are related to operations, first year free, making it easier to get through the permit process, reducing the cost of permits for small businesses, all of those things. And now looking at, okay, what other businesses can take advantage of some of these reductions on the process. Because I do think it is process and regulations and sort of that difficulty of navigating the bureaucracy that makes it hard to do business in the city, and we want to make it easier.
Because it's risk and you need certainty, right,
Right.
to launch a business. So how has that worked out? What have you guys been seeing in terms, since the zoning changes were put in place? Has that brought in new businesses, or what would you say? Is it enough?
I think it's great that the city's done it. I think it's a little too late because when there was huge demand, it was really difficult, and so tenants went elsewhere. But I think it's refreshing to hear that the city's making everything easier, yet, we see in the press, a couple who tries to open something here, they've been bogged down, right? And so that's the hard part, is that while all of these things are great, is it for the person who's actually going through that process, like, why are they getting stuck and not being able to do that? And I think those are some of the things that,
But I will say what the press is not going to tell you is the 70 people who did get through the process. I mean,
yeah. And I think that's part of what needs to be counteracted, right? If something like that gets out there, immediately needs to have, a rebuttal from somebody that's like, look at, like they said, I can't believe how great it was, and this how great it was to work with the city. They were so supportive and great to do that. And we need to hear more of that.
Chris, you had a thought?
So there are there are people and organizations in the city that really care about the city and work their rear ends off and are really focused on changing the city and making things better. The problem is you have this entrenched bureaucracy that doesn't know how to say yes. And people have to learn how to say yes. They have to figure out how to say, what can I do to get your business open? Not send you to the next department, how to say yes. And we really need to go back to how to say yes. When Bob Passmore was planning director, that was a long time ago, I corralled him in an elevator. And I said, I need to get my permit. I got my permit. Bob, that's a long time ago.
the elevator was
Bob?
stuck in City Hall.
Wouldn't get out until
He couldn't get out.
cannot get out till
Okay, so back to Union Square. So obviously we're at a time where the city is, putting a focus on changing the zoning and making it easier and supporting businesses. Whether that's translating yet is, the jury's out on that, right? But we have seen some deals done, and Shotomate is one of the shining examples.
Chotomate convene, and think about these tenants that signed leases in the middle of the pandemic in the conditions and the narrative that the press was giving about the city. The tenants themselves will tell you that investors, friends were like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? And I can tell you they're both very successful, and one of them, it's their best location in the world at the moment. So this goes back to, if you believe in your business and you do something right, and you're very involved, there's huge probability of success. I think the ones you say, like some of the businesses that have closed, right, they've sort of stopped, they've given up. And once you do that, then you know where it's going.
So for some of that new investment that has come in, which we have to say isn't on the same level as businesses leaving. I mean, that's just a fact. But what are they seeing? You said what they're thinking. What are they thinking when they come into Union Square and they're opening up and there's business closing around them, and there's less people because there's less people in the office towers? Like, what do they see that we maybe don't?
Well, they see the opportunity, right? If you know your business, you know your customer, right? It's just like some people, it doesn't matter, because even though people aren't necessarily showing up physically in the office every day, they're certainly going out to eat, they're going out to drink, they're out with their family, they're visiting. So you can't take that as a reason. No, like if you are a business person, the other great, you're looking for opportunity. It's the other thing for San Francisco right now. It's the best time ever to be doing deals. This has historically been one of the toughest, most expensive markets with very, very little availability, right? And so for the first time in my career, there's great real estate, right? And I can tell you, every landlord that we are aware of is very welcoming, very easy to work with, and
Which I hear is a change. Sorry.
But see, and I think I disagree with that comment even, because there are always more difficult landlords, but I'm not aware of any landlord that's has been overly difficult or like charging too much. I think they're all, for the most part, aware. They change with the market, right? And so I don't think that tenants have left or we lost because the landlord was being too difficult or too hard on them. So that's another narrative that's out there, right? I think it's a really tight community. I think all the landlords are vested to make sure that this district thrives and continues to get better. And everyone's playing their part to do that.
And do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I just really appreciate all those comments. I mean, I think, again, we need to continue to do more. The city needs to invest. And I think it's really important. We need to keep doing more. And we need to keep finding ways to invest, make improvements, make the street conditions better. We can't just do it now. I love to hear that the streets are clean down there now. We need to make sure that they're better. We need to make sure that all of the conditions continue to improve. And people we want people to want to go down there. And I think having events going on, having activations going on, having things that are fun to go to, and I do think having active office space is going to be critical. And I think Chris's point is right. I think if we can start to see some office spaces transacting and new businesses coming in, more businesses opening, and getting people back into the office is going to be critical, because those are the people who go into a restaurant after work, go to the bar after work. All of that is going to be necessary to revitalize that and reactivate and bringing residents downtown.
So how is the city, we're talking about office space and kind of out of our control at the moment, right? What happens with that and companies bringing employees back. But if the city could have its way, or how are you guys internally talking about what Union Square could become? If things are taking a little bit longer with the return to work, if the retail trends continue the way they have been towards e-commerce and a little bit less of that traditional shopping, what do you guys see in that?
Well, I think we continue to see Union Square as a strong retail center for San Francisco. It's a strong tourist center for San Francisco. I think there's the hotels are coming back. There's still, we have a strong tourist hotel business down there. It is starting to recover from the pandemic. We want to make investments that actually regenerate that Union Square as a retail center. And I think one of the things that we also want to think about is these are real jobs down there. These are really important jobs that are important to the city, that are in Union Square, that we don't want to lose. That is a job market that we don't want to see go to Walnut Creek or outside of the city. So we want to make sure that we're making the right investments to keep Union Square as a strong center of retail, but making sure that we're growing with the retail industry and in the direction that the retail industry goes in the future.
How important was or is Union Square to the city's budget? Are you able to kind of quantify that?
It's it's as far as sales tax goes. Sales tax is not one of the bigger. The biggest generator of revenue to the city is business tax, but sales tax is also always contributing to the city's coffers. But so Union Square, interestingly, when you asked me this question, I thought Union Square would be the #1 sales tax generator. It's the 4th largest generator in the city. FIDI is the #1. South of Market. And so Union Square, Yerba Buena combined, or if we put them together, is about the 3rd. But with hotels and sales tax, it is a big contributor. We've lost about 7% of our revenue since 2019. So I think because of the luxury market, we haven't lost the revenue that you would have thought we'd lost, because you see a lot of that churn. But I was surprised to see that it's the 4th largest sales tax.
And is that now or before the pandemic?
It's both.
Okay,
yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's a really small area when you think about it. It's this big, so it makes sense.
So having that kind of shopping retail component is still on the agenda and a goal for the city.
Yeah, it makes sense. And again, I think as Kazuko pointed out, there's a sort of specialty genre in Union Square, and I think it makes sense to keep it there. And I think what we do want to think about is how do we revitalize Powell Street and the sort of avenues around it. I think arts and culture. I always think of just west of Union Square, the theater district. How do we make sure that we're also looking at those districts, the sort of avenues that extend out of Union Square, and making sure we're investing in those as well, and bringing uses and bringing the arts into the neighborhood as well.
So bringing arts from like Mid-Market or the Theater District into Union Square, or bolstering
Just
there?
bolstering it
Yeah.
because it's right there. I consider all of that sort of the greater Union Square area. Let's make sure we're investing in all of it.
Okay. Do you see any opportunity to bring any arts institutions directly into Union Square?
I mean, I'm always open to it.
Yeah. Kazuko, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, historically, we haven't had the space to do it. Now we do. So I think there's a lot of different types of uses that landlords are talking to, different uses. I mean, from San Francisco Center to what the Macy's building. I mean, there's several areas of opportunity and growth. And so that's really what I think we're going to see in the coming years, is just see different types of uses, and I think exciting uses that'll bring people, and even not just arts, culture, and school, right? Because people go every day, right? And they're same thing. People shop. People have to eat.
Right.
And it's just the coming and goings, and that adds to the vibrancy.
So is the size of the spaces that are currently vacant in Union Square and around, right? Because we're talking largely about, the small spaces are doing fairly well, but it's the large big box retail that's hard to fill, what I understand. So this is a question to all of you, but Anne specifically, how do you guys kind of tackle that, and in terms of kind of dividing up that space maybe, or how do you fill big box vacant spaces that are left behind and there's no one to backfill that in terms of a big retail tenant?
Well, the trend started pre-pandemic, right? You have large, big spaces, and tenants came in pre sort of online sales and that, right? So now your sale is split between brick and mortar and online. And so you're not, while the brand itself, there are studies that have shown that if you open in a brick and mortar location, that the online sales do surge, right, exponentially. But that store that was getting 100% of sales is now sharing. So do you need the same amount of space? Do you need to hold as much inventory as you used to, right? You don't, because if it's not in the store, they'll get it to you tomorrow or the same day today. So I think that's one of the reasons why the physical sizes have gone down. The other thing is the sector of retail that has been the most effective is that mid-priced, right? So like the real value, the Rosses, that has done pretty well throughout this whole cycle, and then the luxury. It's really the priced retailers that have been the most affected. Yeah. So it's like I said, it's not just San Francisco, it's Europe, it's everywhere around the world, and it goes along with the sort of the change and the evolution of a department store too, right? They have to rethink the size, and that's what's tough, because how many 50,000 square foot tenants are there today that are non-department store, non-furniture based, right? You can count them on your hands.
But I think getting rid of the sort of changing the zoning requirements, getting rid of some of those restrictions, getting rid of the second, third, and fourth, and fifth floor having to be retail, and allowing them to be other uses. So you can have retail on that ground floor. You can have restaurants and other things on the ground floor, and then have other uses, arts uses, institutional uses, offices, residential above. And I think just creating that vibrancy by just diversifying the uses above, but I think really that ground floor plane, having those active retail uses, still makes a lot of sense.
Chris, how does housing kind of intersect? You're a housing guy. Do you see opportunities in Union Square? Anne just said that zoning permits housing as well. What's the deal with housing in Union Square?
So, housing in Union Square, the nice thing about Union Square is it has a lot of small footprints of buildings. So converting them to residential, the footprint size makes sense versus a big office building that has a 50,000 square foot footprint floor plan is really hard to put a residential in because the building is too deep. So you can't get light and air into the back. So if you have a small 10 or 12,000 square foot floor plate, that's kind of your perfect floor plate. And if it's smaller, they even work. They also work. But I want to mention housing. What we have to, it's not just Union Square. The solution for Union Square and the solution for San Francisco is to have more people live here again. So we're at 816,000 people. Peak, we're at 880. And again, we're not going to have those million people coming in here anymore. So we have to build lots of housing. We have to build it everywhere So the locals want to go to Union Square, the tourists want to go to Union Square, businesses want to move here because housing is cheaper because we built a lot of housing. We need to build affordable housing. We need to build SROs. We need to build market rate. We just need to build a lot of housing. We need to build at Union Square, but everywhere. We need to get the population up.
So arguably, this is the best time to do it because the city has really made that easy. But what's stopping some of these conversions?
Okay, so I'm going to kill myself right here. So the Fed put out a report on Monday about the inflation. And they said part of the inflation, a big chunk of it, is residential rents. And they said residential rents went up 5.7%. So it's affecting inflation. So they don't want to lower interest rates. Well, the reason you can't build housing is because interest rates are too high. So you actually can't make the economics work to build a building. So between construction costs and interest rates, trying to build a multifamily apartment building or a conversion today, it does not work unless you're at probably $1,400 a foot in condo sale or $850, $9 rents. So we actually have to have the federal government realize, and maybe the state of California realize, they need to figure out a way to reduce the cost of the interest rate for housing, and then hopefully the overall cost to build the buildings will come down.
Well, yeah, that's the biggest issue too, though, is the cost of construction, right? So while the basis of you can buy the real estate for much cheaper with your interest rate and the continued cost of construction, that's what's really making it tough. So, on one hand, we're 50% there, but it still doesn't pencil. And so that's where the city, to spur it, need to give major economic incentives, right?
But the problem so the city, if the city and the state could do a property tax abatement like New York City, where you abate it for 25 years, there's actually that's a real incentive that's going to work. Reducing the fees for a moment, or having the fees get paid when you complete the building, that's really not going to help. And it's the same amount of money to take an existing building and convert it as to build a new building. Because you actually have to disassemble the old building and reassemble it. Because think about this, an office building has one set of bathrooms on a floor. You might have 10 apartments on a floor with 10 kitchens and 10 bathrooms, which means you have to have a lot of holes.
So what I'm hearing is that Union Square actually has a lot of interesting buildings that could be great for conversions, but the economy isn't there. And until that changes, people like you aren't moving forward.
You can't. I mean, there's where interest rates are today and construction costs are today, it's basically almost impossible to build.
Yeah, there's an enormous gap. I mean, there's still an enormous gap in financing both conversion and just ground up construction. And so I think this is something that we work on every single day. And how do we close that gap?
So I just want to get back to the Macy's building because that's how we started the conversation, and everybody wants to know what's happening with this property. So just a quick update. Macy's will be there until at least 2025. They're trying to sell the building. It's unclear if they might stay longer if the building doesn't sell, unless you know something that I don't. But if we can kind of think big, that's a huge property, 400,000 square feet. What is the potential? It's right there by the Union Square Plaza. I mean, what could we put there? What do you want to see there? What if you could dream big? What's your plan?
This is more Kazuko than me, but go to Tokyo, go to Singapore, go to really big cities, and see what they do with multi-story buildings like that. And there's food, there's retail, there's experiences you can go to. One of my friends just got back from Japan and Singapore, and they had all these great things for the kids to do in the malls. So there were all these experiences the kids could go through and have fun at and spend. And what happens is the parents go, they drop the kids off, they go spend money, and then they come back and grab the kids. So we have to make a reason. So to Kazuko's point, when she was a young girl with her mom, they'd get dressed up and go to Union Square, and it was an experience. You have to make Union Square and that big mall and a reason to want to go there. It has to be exciting.
Kazuko, thoughts? I know you just came back from Tokyo, but also, when you look at that building, like, what do you see? And
I
even
just see
redevelopment.
huge opportunity, right? And like I said, if you look at the new developments around the world, the uses that they programmed in there, and very heavy, like you'll see in food and beverage, which is interesting, is going back even 20 years. If you went to a mall in Hong Kong or even South America, a third of the tenants then were food and beverage. At the time in the US, it was about 10%. So we're finally seeing that shift now. If you go down to Valley Fair, if you go to Santana Row, if you know, that is what keeps people at the centers longer, and it's the same thing with Union Square. We need more of those uses. It also keeps the vibrancy longer. You have so many hotel rooms. You talked about the theater, right? But because we are so heavily occupied by apparel or jewelry stores or things that close down at 5, 6 o'clock, it's very quiet early on. And like you said, if you walk around Manhattan, if you walk around Tokyo, it's alive, it's vibrant. There's people on the street. In Europe at night, 10, 11 o'clock, midnight, there's packed, right? It's because you have those other uses, and those are the types of uses that we need to bring into that building, right? So it's not just about the soft goods.
And also want to pose this question to you for the city. You know, what is the potential of the Macy's building, and what do you hope? What do you encourage there?
I mean, I think we want to stay very engaged through this entire process. I mean, we don't want to be surprised again. We don't want to be caught. You know, we don't want to be blindsided by anything that happens there. We 100% agree with this. I think we want to keep Macy's there as long as they possibly can stay there, and even beyond a transaction. You know, whatever that transaction is, we want to make sure that we're engaged in what happens during the transaction, after the transaction. And I think this is exactly, you know, what Kazuko and Chris are describing is ideal. I mean, it's a lot of space. So I think we have to be flexible and creative about how the city can lean in and make sure that whatever happens in this transaction, it is good for the city. And so, you know, it's got to be good for Macy's. It's got to be good for whoever acquires the building, and it's got to be good for the city. And I think and it's got to be good for Union Square. And all of what we're describing here and what we're hearing here is, you know, we're all on the same page.
I think we'll leave it there. Time for questions from the audience.
Yeah, we're going to take some questions now. I hope everyone has questions. Before we get started, really quick, I see hands going up. I just want to take a quick poll of the room. If you work in San Francisco, we keep hearing about work from home being a problem, and we need people to be back in offices and energizing the city and energizing downtown. If you work in San Francisco and you work from home at least 2 days a week, can you raise your hand? Okay, interesting to see. We're going to take questions. Before you ask your question, quickly, if you have a relationship to Union Square, just share what your relationship is. If you're a customer, a business owner, I'd love to hear from people in the room why you're here tonight and what your relationship is to Union Square. So hands up, who's got questions? All right, we'll start right here.
We have vibrant neighborhoods in San Francisco. I was in North Beach. All the restaurants were filled. There was all kinds of foot traffic. 24th Street, Clement Street. Have a night devoted to one neighborhood. Bring the Mexican people down to Union Square and have them entertain people. Bring the Filipinos with their food down to Union Square another night. Bring the Chinese with whatever they have to offer. Bring the vibrant neighborhoods. They have the energy. Bring the energy down to Union Square at night so people get used to going down there, and we'll go down there other times.
Hi, I'll stand up, although I'm no taller. I came here because the first time I ever saw Union Square, I was about 8 or 10 years old as a tourist with my mother, who had a former San Franciscan who never got over it. And I remember Union Square. There were benches, there were people feeding pigeons. There was a lot going on. It was locals as well as tourists. It was warm and welcoming. A few years ago, somebody had the bright idea to redo Union Square, and it's cold, it's all concrete, it is not welcoming. And I think that's a start to bring locals back, to do things with the plaza itself, have activities that bring San Franciscans. We don't go down there to Saks or to Neiman's, et cetera, to buy things, but we can go down there for activities. You can have, remember the Macy's Christmas windows with the kittens? It's kitten season right now at the SPCA. Why not have them bring kittens down and people can adopt? Have things to bring people to the square, because you have two constituencies. You have tourists that may be looking for high-end merchandise or just looking to buy something on their trip. You have locals. The other thing I remember as a child going down there, the flower stalls on the corners. They were incredible. We've lost that charm, and I think we need to get that back.
Do you guys want to respond?
I really appreciate that, and we are working on that now. I think that is something that we are trying to figure out. We're looking at investing in activating Union Square again, and I really appreciate your comments. And I think that's the kind of and the flower stalls. I love that idea. So I think that those are really good recommendations. Oh yeah, and we have the tulip.
Yeah, so they do the Union Square. The Union Square Alliance has been fantastic. I mean, really,
Anybody's
just
here tonight, but
best. I mean, just really kudos to just the amount of hard work and effort, and really keeping programmed, keeping alive. The tulips that they did is just beautiful and vibrant, and just the flowers. So I think it's on its way to even more.
And I'll tell you right now, anyone who's gone to the Chinatown night market, whoever's gone there, how great is that? It's packed. Bring it down.
So, Anne, is that something that could be considered, or are you guys considering that for Union Square?
Night market.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all of those. I mean, we want to activate Union. We want to activate Union Square year round, every week. I mean, I think that's what we need to do, and so I think it's just figuring out exactly, getting all that programming in place.
Got to get kittens in there, though.
Kittens. I will go down there every day if there's kittens down there.
Hi. I think one problem that the city has with Union Square and the financial district area is that area is almost entirely commercial, and so that people don't live there. And so at night, the area empties out. And this is a problem that's common to many cities around the country. It seems like other cities around the country have had more success in converting commercial spaces into residential spaces, and employ different incentives and different policy tools to make that happen. And my question is San Francisco working on that, and why haven't we had that success here?
Sonny, block your ears. So I will say this. I looked this up before I came down here today. We have 10,000 units of housing currently in the pipeline in our downtown district. So about 3,000 of those currently are permitted. So it's just a matter of, again, getting them built. So we want to keep encouraging more housing in our downtown, and particularly in our sort of financial district. We have not had a lot of housing built in our downtown specifically, but we have had a lot built around our downtown. Again, getting rid of some of the restrictions, some of the constraints to build housing. So even though it's always been principally permitted, there have been things like setbacks and fees that make it a little bit more challenging to build. We did just pass a ballot measure to waive the transfer tax on any conversion from office to housing. So if you actually convert the office to housing, the housing project will get that first sale as a waiver on their transfer tax, which can be significant. We still need to do more. We need to figure out what else is going to close that gap so that the cost of building that housing is feasible. But it's critical that we create that 24/7 community, and that we diversify the economy in our downtown so that it's not just commercial.
You know, I'm going to tell you one thing. When you start talking about Tokyo or Singapore or Hong Kong, there's 20 million people in Tokyo. All right, so our population peak was 880. Now it's 820. We actually need to get a lot more people in here to do what we're talking about. We need probably a population in San Francisco of 1.2 million, 1.3 million, 1.4 million, and that means a lot of housing. And if we do that, we can actually go do a bunch of food and beverage in Union Square, and everybody's going to cruise down there and eat and drink because there's actually transit to get down there, and it's a great neighborhood.
Hi there. I just want to say thank you so much for hosting this event. It's been very insightful. I would be coming from the perspective of someone shopping at Union Square. My question is, how do you believe crime has fit into the doom loop narrative, and what solutions have been discussed to reduce retail theft and property damage?
Who wants to take that?
Well, I can say that, the crime is everywhere. It's in Beverly Hills, it's in Walnut Creek. This is a statewide and U.S. issue. And so it's not just here. I can't speak about how they're addressing it long term, but I think the short term, we're seeing, what people are doing physically with, gates and more security. But that's a whole nother, a bigger topic of conversation.
But I think 5-6 years ago we had 2,500 or 2,600 police officers. I think we're down to 1,800 in San Francisco. So we actually need more police on the ground. We need them walking around. I'll tell you, it's very interesting. When you actually meet the beat cop on the street, that person is a great person. They're actually wonderful people, and they want to do things. They're just running from one thing to the next. They need more beat cops, and they need more support. As the police officer, they just need more support.
Did that answer your question, or do you want to rephrase? Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, right. To your point, Chris, a project like Macy's that you multi-use, you mentioned about dropping the fees for conversions on residential as well, dropping regulations or getting rid of some of the regulations. What more needs to be done? Because you said it's going to take a lot more. So the project that you're talking about, take over Macy's, what does the city really need to do to get that kind of project done besides, forget the permits, forget the regulations dropping? What else needs to be done to get projects like that and more residential downtown?
So there's a couple structural issues, right? Interest rates are too high, so you actually can't finance it today. And the commercial real estate lending market, the lending market to build anything right now, is horrific. So interest rates and the lending market are terrible. Construction costs are really bad. Those two have to figure each other out, right? But then what's going to happen is, with all the new laws that are happening both at the city level and the state level, what's going to happen is when that kind of right porridge temperature hits, you're going to see a bunch of buildings go up. And that's what's going to happen. And I think what the city can do is they can help continue to work at the planning department and the Department of Building Inspection to allow people to get permits out. But I will tell you right now, when the world gets better over the next 12, 24 months around interest rates and construction costs, you will see a bunch of construction in San Francisco, because we will come back. And people believe in San Francisco. And that's why you're seeing these office buildings trade. We will come back.
Just one thing, I appreciate that question. And I do just want to say, from what I've heard from DBI, I just had a talk with them, the building inspection department. I mean, it sounds like permit times are cut in half, right? Like they've really rehauled their processes over the last 2 years, overhauled, not rehauled. And my question is same as his question, at what point, right? So what you're saying is you're teeing everything up at the moment, but it really just depends on the larger economy that's out of our hands.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. If you really want to create a real 24-hour city, first of all, the transit needs to be 24 hours. Muni and BART should be 24-hour systems. On top of that, the bars and clubs need to stay open past 2 a.m. Another thing. So, I mean, if you truly want a 24-hour city, you have to let things stay open all night. That's what creates a 24-hour city. That brings the foot traffic on the streets and the vibrancy in the neighborhoods. Secondly, I think San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose should do a joint bid for the Olympics, Summer Olympics. That would bring international exposure to the region.
Good idea? What do you think?
Sounds like a great idea to me. I'm a business owner on Maiden Lane. I'm also an architect. I worked with Chris, our firm worked with Chris on transforming historic buildings into amazing new places of gathering. Speaking of the Macy's building, what the city can do in addition to everything that's been discussed is sponsor competition, invite people to create a vision. Vision is important. Before financing comes around, you need to come up with ideas. There's a lot of talent in the city. There is a lot of talent that can produce ideas. Build on that. Everything else will come, but do that.
I think that's
Great
a great
idea. Super idea.
On that point, has anybody come forward with a big plan? I know we've heard about the soccer stadium and stuff, but is there
And
anything?
the Macy's building?
Yes.
No, I mean, it's still, I think everyone's still getting used to the idea. We currently have submitted a couple city buildings for competitions, one South Van Ness city-owned buildings. We have entered Westfield into a design competition, but I think that's a great idea, yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I live on the other side of Van Ness, so many times I've wanted to walk downtown, but the streets seem to drop off right past the St. Francis going towards Van Ness. It's just dirtier, and it seems like it's really clean around Union Square, but then a block away, it just gets really dirty. There's piles of garbage. And now I understand a lot of that's the homeless, but we know the homeless are there, and we know that there's going to be extra need in those areas. So if I walk up to California, it's doable. But going up Sutter, going up Geary, it just starts to be full of garbage right after a block. So anyway, that was just a comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recently, I went to Civic Center, and they had totally like cleaned that up and put like games, and so how did that happen?
I think where we built the skate park, and
Probably.
yeah,
And it was just totally like, they were trying to do something.
so I mean, so the city owns that part, and so they built a skate park recently, and it makes, the skate park is there's a lot of skateboard businesses on Market Street, very close to that section. So there was a natural sort of affinity to that use there. And I mean, I think again, we're trying to figure out new uses. We're trying to figure out activation. We're trying to keep our spaces active, and we just have to keep working at it.
I think that her idea is really good about competition for a vision.
Okay, so just a couple of ideas to bring people to Union Square or back to Union Square. I would feature the sports teams, the Bay Area sports teams in a gift shop type of setting. The Giants, the 49ers, the Warriors, the various soccer teams, because that if tourists come in, that they're interested in that kind of thing. I would also have a large screen TV in Union Square, because that brings people together. And this summer for the Olympics would be a perfect opportunity to have people gather in Union Square and watch the games. Also, we have excellent museums in this city, really excellent. And I think if you could have a gift shop that would represent the DeYoung, Legion, SF MoMA,
I like that idea.
the Jewish Museum, all of that in Union Square to alert the people who are visiting of what else is in the city. And finally, I would do something about the neighborhoods. Feature the neighborhoods in Union Square so people know what else is out there. Okay.
Design criteria.
Any other questions?
Yeah, hi. As somebody who runs a business in Union Square and is in Union Square every day, I think, and I've dealt with Kazuko, with Brightex, I guess you kind of know us. Kazuko was kind of instrumental in moving us. But I think one thing that really needs to happen in San Francisco, and the city can kind of take charge of it, is change the narrative. Do what the city can to change the narrative locally, nationally, and internationally, in the press, in the media, because I was just in Salzburg a month and a half ago and was going through the airport and spoke with three gentlemen at customs, And they said, oh, you're from San Francisco? You can't even walk down the streets there without getting killed, right, or getting mugged. I mean, this is, and I go, and the same thing in Milan when I was there. So I just think the city needs to take some steps to get a narrative out there that's not a doom loop narrative, but it's a positive narrative about narrative about what's happening in San Francisco, the things that have changed in San Francisco, the good things about it, rather than all the bad things that have been going on in the media for 3 years. And you only see negative stuff. You don't see positive. And just one other thing about if you go to city, just a little pushback on the department store and where they've gone. If you go to any other cities, if you go to Milan, Rinascente, if you go to Paris, Galerie Lafayette, Printemps, if you go to London, Harrods, if you go to Barcelona, all those department stores, huge department stores, you can barely walk in those department stores on the weekends. The escalators are full, people are shopping. So I think their stores can come to big box places like Macy's if you get the right entrepreneurs here.
Yeah, they're all cool and interesting. All the stores you talked about.
Right,
Right,
exactly.
Like Britex is cool and interesting, by
Right.
the way.
Thank you.
Agreed. Yeah. Versus Macy's just was dying on the vine.
And I appreciate what you're saying, and I do think the narrative is incredibly important. And I am also going to say that I really will ask our media partners to also help us change the narrative. I think it's really important that our local newspapers really support the city in the narrative, because if it's only negative stories that are being reported, if there's no interest in that there's 30 stores closing but 25 opening, then it's very, very difficult for the city to just put out a narrative that's not getting picked up in the media if the only thing that sells papers or gets clicks are the negative stories.
I'll respond to that.
Most people.
I would like to say that I can only speak for the Chronicle since I've gotten there 6 months ago. But I would say the Chronicle takes a very concerted effort to understand what's happening in the market and to accurately report on the trends that we're seeing and how the city is changing, and it is changing.
And I can tell you that, we do a lot of tenant tours. We have a lot of investors that come into town, lenders, and for the most part, they have a fantastic experience, and they're like, I don't know what people are talking about. And so, we ask of them, just please spread that news because, like I said, the negative news is hurting us, and we're on the road to recovery, and we have good momentum, great businesses, and we just need to continue that and just put everything behind us and move on.
So I just had a capital partner come out from Miami, and he travels all over the world on a regular basis. And he was here for a week, and at the end of the week he goes, it's really not that bad, but everywhere in the world says we're the worst. And we do have issues, but he said the same thing I said, and that is, you guys are going to come back. We're going to come back, but we all have to work on that together. And we all just be nice to each other. We actually just can't battle each other. We can agree to disagree. How about that?
I have one thing that I want to, and we'll get to the rest of the questions, but I thought your point was super interesting about, business hours and closing early, and we're seeing that here. I live in this neighborhood, and we're seeing that here in Valencia Street too. And I would be interested to hear from you guys just a little bit about, I know you can't tell businesses to stay open late, right? But what kind of goes into that?
But I think those are all ideas that we are working on too. I think we're talking about an entertainment zone where I think there is, we always have to work within state restrictions, but we are working on ways. Can we create a zone where we can keep businesses open later, where we can keep bars open later, where we can have open containers in a restricted area? I think those are all ideas that I think everyone is trying to work on now. So I think those are really important ideas about creating this, attracting young people, attracting people who want to be out at night. And again, I think that will get people back into the offices if they can go out after work, past 8 o'clock at night.
I'd love to continue this conversation with another one of these where we talk about directional flow, because I keep thinking as we're talking about this, and I'm hearing you say repeatedly that we need more population within the city to have some of these ideas work. And I've been here since '99, and my entire professional life I've been in Class A office space in the financial district. I live near Dolores Park. So my entire life has always been starting downtown, financial district downtown, stopping off for a play in the evening or a Union Square or a whatever, dinner. And it wasn't until COVID that I realized how many of my colleagues don't live in the city because I didn't see them in the evenings anymore, and I still don't see them in the evenings. And my building spans 4 city blocks, and I think the vacancy rate in my building is extremely low, but there are like 5 of us in the office suite, and I'm the subtenant, so this is the tenant who they have the space, but they're not successful in bringing their people in. And I go to a lot of business meetings around the financial district, and people are always looking for host space because even though the buildings are not vacant, the people are not there to host. So I just keep thinking about all these people who used to stay in the city at night because they were already in the city, and how many of those people we're losing because they're not coming in from outside. And then one more thing, I was at the Presidio after work last night, and I had been reading about how that's the new, that's one of the new big places to have office life, and I was blown away how true that is, that it was so different from what I used to see if I was there in the evenings, and how that's really seems very populous and like a place to hang out, and so.
All good thoughts.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I have a question. We've talked about changing the narrative and how important that is to spread the word about San Francisco and that San Francisco is going to come back. And I'm curious for the 3 of you, what are the projects, what are the conversations that you're seeing in the city that you're excited about, that gives you hope, and that when you're talking about San Francisco's recovery and rebound, that you go, here is the prime example, this is an indication?
I have people that want to invest money in San Francisco for the long term. And I'm seeing people that are buying these buildings. And that is the narrative, team. People, you can talk Dunoop, you can talk all this stuff, but people are buying these buildings and they're investing. So we'll come back, but it's just going to take it's going to take time. It's not going to come back as fast as it ever did before, because we're going to have those million people coming into town every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We got to build our population up again in the town.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm right now from people who've been on the sidelines as well. People are really vested in San Francisco. They love San Francisco, and they just want to do some great things. And I think we're at an inflection point where it makes sense to be able to do it. So I think, the future is exciting, and as I said, it's going to take time, but I think we're going to see some change and it'll thrive again.
Oh boy. Great. I think one of the things that Chris said earlier is like, or maybe you said it as well, because it goes like, now is the time, right? I mean, now is the time to invest. Now is the time to take advantage. I mean, you work with organizations like CAST, and they recognize like, oh, there's opportunity here now. There's opportunity that we have not seen in San Francisco in decades. And so I think people are realizing, I haven't had an opportunity to be sort of on the ground floor of San Francisco in the past. So now is the time to really take a look around and say, like, I can be someone who's buying a building, starting a business, starting a project. I think all of that, and I do think you have despite Chris's, sort of bureaucratic dislike right now, there's a government right now that really wants to see that happen. We want to get out of the way. I mean, I say that all the time. We need to know where to lean in and where to get out of the way, and that's what we want to learn right now.
We've got a question over here. All right. We probably have time for 2 more questions. All right, 1, 2.
Hi, yeah, thanks for coming and sharing all of this with us. I wanted to bring it back to the Macy's point again, and speaking from the perspective of a shopper, and also like on behalf of like my cohort and my friends and stuff. I think, a lot of people are not really shopping at like Macy's and, the stores in Union Square. But I also get the sense that people are not really shopping at Macy's like in general. I feel like speaking as a guy, like buying clothes in person is a really dreadful experience. You convince yourself you can go and like, oh, there's going to be a lot of stuff for me. And then you go and then it's like, either you get like a $10 shirt with like the college or like letters like that, or it's like something $1,000 for like Louis Vuitton. So like there's no, to turn this into a question, I feel like the Union Square retail market is very like aimed at one archetype. You know, it's like you can either get like some stuff here that no one wants, or like really expensive stuff in Macy's, or you have like your Prada, your Gucci, or you know, related brands. And I guess my fear is that as there's sort of this correction that goes on and new things come into stores that like other brands have vacated, it sort of maintains that archetype of like either luxury retail or it's aimed at one kind of thing. And I'm just wondering how you think about how to diversify that. Because for context, my girlfriend lives in Chicago, so I go there a lot. And every time I go to like their like, you know, shopping districts or like streets here or streets there, there's just a very like varied vibe you get in different places. And there's no like one place I would identify as like, this is like the place to only get this thing. But I think in Union Square, that's like that vibe. You know, it's like this is luxury. So, what's your take on like how to avoid that archetype?
I think it's just because of right now, right? But historically, Union Square has been all things to all people. So you can get Marshalls, Ross, Forever 21. I mean, you have to go back in time too. Is that San Francisco for a lot of these brands, and from H&M to like Gap, Ross, all of it. I mean, San Francisco was typically their number 1 or number 2 store in the entire country, volume-wise. And so this goes back to Chris's. It's a density issue, right? San Francisco, the retail does very well in Union Square because it's compact and it's dense. But at the moment, we're lacking the bodies 7 days a week. And so that's one of the things that'll help bring some of the more moderate priced brands to Union Square.
That was a great question, and I know that a goal of the city, Mayor London Breed's plan that was introduced last year, is to diversify the businesses in downtown in general. So how is that, you know, if you want to respond to his question just about how to keep that area accessible to everybody and have something there for everybody?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I think, you know, I don't think we want to eliminate what's currently happening in Union Square. I think we always want to have, I mean, there's a luxury component of Union Square that I think is important that we keep there. And again, like there's a quality of job that's associated with that we want to keep in Union Square. And then I think we want to add to it. And I think, again, I think Powell Street is something that we want to populate with a kind of, you know, more sort of, I don't know what the word is. I know there's a very specific sort of mid.
Or contemporary, or
yeah.
just, you know, there's just other brands there.
Yeah.
It's just, but like I said, Powell Street was Times Square West, right?
Right.
Because it was so dense and the millions and millions of people. And then you saw what happened during COVID. And so it takes time. But a lot of it comes back to we need to get people back downtown.
Yeah.
And that means giving them a reason to come downtown. Also means bringing, you know, the restaurants or the retailers that are not in every mall in the Bay Area, right? So one of a kind. And so I think that's where some of the focused and shift needs to be, is courting some of those and more of those, I'd say.
And I think the city needs to invest to make it attractive to attract those retailers.
Yeah.
My name's Brian. I'm born and raised in San Francisco, and I'm kind of just going to echo kind of what was said there. Seems like we're talking about the continuation of a commercial space, but is that really what we want long-term for San Francisco? Like, let's talk about climate. Let's talk about different industries. We're talking about artists. You're talking about all this vibrancy that we need in the city, but the people that brought that vibrancy aren't the people that would be going to Union Square. And I think we need to talk about how we can incentivize, whether they're working spaces for creatives or really tackling climate. Maybe we're looking at vertical farming. Like, let's change the industry, because I think tech has really shown its time, and the reason why you don't have people on the street is partially because of that industry. So how do we invite other industries to come here and think about that long-term goal of San Francisco? And I understand the short term, like, let's get there, but like even commercial space, when you talk about clothing, right? Let's look at VR, AR. That's going to change that whole landscape. So is that really going to be the long-term solution for a place like Union Square?
Well, I actually think the first thing you brought up was really important. That's the artist and the creative. When I moved here, San Francisco is full of artistic, creative, wild, crazy shit going on every day. And it was great. And people lived in the top floor of an old building in Soma, and 20 people lived there, and they created great art, and Soma Arts was vibrant, and you had all this great stuff. And it was pushed out for all sorts of reasons, and tech is one of the big ones. But we actually have to bring the artist and the creative back in. And the nice thing is rents and prices are really cheap right now. The problem is they left and they found a place for themselves to live. So it's really hard for that creative artist type to leave where to come back here after they created something in somewhere else. So I think bringing the arts and creative and excitement about that is actually one of the most important things we can do. I can have a long talk about vertical farming and how it kind of works and doesn't work, but that's a whole different subject. And on climate change, I think if a bunch of climate change companies want to be here, that'd be great. But I think on the art side, we have done a great job. San Francisco's done a great job on just basically cutting the arts off their knees. And that's been for a long time.
Do you have a follow-up question, Brian?
I guess the follow-up question is there going to be like programs or discussions of how do we, again, just the question, I guess, reflects back is how do we bring back that artist and how do you make that welcome? And you can't afford it. And it's like, how are we going to subsidize housing for artists? Do we subsidize like maybe the materials? I'm just wondering if that's in the discussion there.
So you just have to build lots and lots of housing, so housing becomes really cheap and really affordable. And you have to build housing, all sorts of housing. You have to build affordable, you have to build workforce, you have to build market rate, you have to build SROs, you have to build student housing. Just build a shitload of housing, and people will come. But we have to build more housing so it gets cheaper.
But I do have to say, as you said yourself, this isn't the time to necessarily build housing, right? I mean, that's kind of what
You have to plan to build the housing. So all the things, there's lots of units that are approved to get built, but when the time
64,000
Yeah,
units
but
are approved to be built.
Yeah, unluckily they're designed pre-COVID and they have to be redesigned, but that's a whole other subject. But when the time is right, the city and the state has to allow this stuff to get built, and that's with construction cost industries. The city and the state have a massive budget shortfall. They're screwed. So we just have to rejuvenate the city, get businesses back in, start to generate the economy again, and then figure out how to bring the arts back.
good questions. Anybody else?
I think that's all we have time for. Thank you guys so much. Let's give a round of applause to our incredible panel and to all of you for your ideas and for your love for San Francisco. Thank you guys so much for being here.
They don't go to Chronicle, they go to two birds with one stone, three birds with one stone. Driving down to if you enjoy this, it's the famous drawing. You take a picture and they'll look up and go, that smells good. There's no chance of a forest fire on the lake, but because there is a forest fire here, if that isn't already happening, then it's a huge problem. I wanted to hear from you. Sharp and starting line. This is your money. But if you don't like this proposal, you're 100% not going to get it. You can't guarantee that you're going to be successful, but most people are. So just an outreach to the state and see what, how we can, because if we're a major part of their coffers and we're big, we are in this together. Pleasure. Thank you.
You're a lot of fun. We love it. By the way, she's very creative. I'm not. Everybody's happy. That's where nobody fiber those kids. So text me. We'll get there for dinner. Not worth more than $20. Thank you very much.
Trump looks mad. The judge will come in this morning and go, jail. Yeah.
they've been blanking it on the core fires. And they've been doing it for a couple of years. And now we're back on. So when you talk about repopulating 60 the reason we could afford the place we had was because nobody was really living on it. So there was, no. Have a great day. I just wanted to see if you could get this thing in. Sacramento and